In this lesson, we'll explore some of the different light types that we have available inside of Cinema 4D. Okay, so here I have just this very simple scene, just really a simple plane that's been dropped into the scene. Now, inside of Cinema 4D, we have this light menu, and here we can choose from several different light types. So what I'll do for now is just rip this off, so that way we can have this here in our workspace. Now we have, again, a couple of different lights, and what we'll do in this lesson is just very briefly sort of run down what are some of the differences between these different lights, and then in our next lesson we'll talk about some of the actual light attributes that are responsible for the overall look and feel of your lights. So first we have our primary light. Now this is what is sometimes called a point light or an omnidirectional light. This is really sort of like kind of a light bulb, for lack of a better word. Sort of looking at the overall shape of this, sort of like the little icon here would represent, it's actually emitting light out in all directions in 360-degree spherical pattern. Again, sort of like a light bulb would behave. So this is going to be really good for any sort of a central light source that you want to maybe illuminate an entire room. So let's go ahead and take this light. I'll just delete that out for now. Moving on, we have our spotlight. Pretty self-explanatory. Really just acts like a little focused cone of light. So what I'll do is just move this up for now. We can come in, take our spotlight, start to rotate this down, and here you can actually see the behavior. So we get sort of this focused little cone of light. We can come in here and grab some of these manipulators, and if we want our cone to be a little bit wider or a little bit more focused, we have full control over that. Okay, so that's the spotlight. Now we also have the target light, which is pretty much exactly the same as a spotlight, but with one added little component. So with a target light, we have the spotlight itself, again with the exact same controls for the cone. We can come in here and start to move this light around, and what we have is a situation where the light will actually move and stay pointed at a particular target. Now that target can be found here inside of our object manager, and we could just pick up that little target, move that around, and you can see the spotlight will stay pointed right at it. So pretty nice little feature to have. We also have the area light. Now the area light's a little bit different in that it doesn't necessarily try to simulate more of a central light source. Instead, this is really sort of like what you might think of for maybe a recessed fluorescent light, where it's sort of emitting out in a 180-degree pattern. And really what we have in this case is this sort of an area light that's emitting out 180 degrees in this direction and 180 degrees in this direction. Again, sort of think of this like a flat little panel that light is maybe not necessarily coming from one central source, but it's trying to simulate more of a larger, more spread out, more diffuse type of light. Now if we come in here and press Alt-R on my keyboard, you can maybe sort of see what we're talking about here, where we have sort of these two halves or these two hemispheres of light. So light being emitted 180 degrees in this direction and 180 degrees in this direction. You can sort of see that little break in the illumination between those two. Now, as we start to get into one of our later lessons, you'll start to see sort of where these area lights can really become useful, especially when it comes to creating certain types of shadowing effects. But for now, that is the area light. Again, not necessarily simulating light that comes from one single point in space, but trying to simulate light that comes from a larger, more diffuse area. Now, the last two that we have is the infinite light and the sunlight. Now, these two are very similar in their overall behavior. The infinite light is really meant to simulate what you might think of with a sun. It's going to be a light source that doesn't necessarily radiate from one central point in space. Instead, it's trying to simulate light that comes from an infinitely far distance. So what you can see is if I take this and rotate it down, that there's really no central area or central point where this light's coming from. As I take this light and move it back and forth, there's absolutely no change in the lighting of our scene. So where you place an infinite light doesn't matter at all. The only thing that matters is the orientation of that light. So if I set this back to a world rotation, set this, you can see as I start to rotate the light, now it's actually changing the light direction. So really don't let this fool you. The overall position of this, again, really doesn't matter. It's only the angle at which the light's coming in from. Again, this is going to be good for a infinitely far light source, something like the sun, where one light source could literally light the entire scene from infinity to infinity in all directions. Okay, so that is the infinite light. The sunlight is actually very similar. The only difference is that with the sun, we have what is basically the sun expression tag. So if we go in here to this is where we can actually start to control the overall position of this sun. So here we can start to grab a particular time of day, a particular latitude or longitude, and simulate light that is appearing at a certain time of the day. Again, this is basically using an infinite light, simulating a light source that is infinitely far away. And really when it comes to using the sunlight, we have to use this sun control tag. As we grab our sunlight and start to move that around, you can see it actually doesn't have any effect at all. So the position and the angle of our sun is driven entirely by this sun expression tag. Okay, so that's just a quick look at some of the different light types that we have inside of Cinema 4D. Now the one light type that we didn't talk about is called an IES light. Now this allows us to actually bring in light data or an IES file from a particular light manufacturer, so we can actually simulate light that is a very specific intensity, light that is maybe passing through a particular lens, again, all depending on the actual light manufacturer. And to use this, you have to have some kind of an IES light profile to be able to work with. Okay, so that is just a quick overview of some of the different light types. Now in our next lesson, we'll actually start to focus on some of these different lighting attributes that are going to be responsible for the overall look, feel of our lights.